Okay, so I'm 63 this year. I'm about average for a British farmer. I'm also typical in that none of my 5 children want to go into farming, and that's the case that, you know, the next generation do not want to enter an industry which is just so hard to make a living. I mean, it's also true that according to our survey, roughly half of farmers, vegetable farmers, think they're not going to be in business next year. I mean, they just cannot make it pay. And every year the price is driven down and down and down by the competitive tendering that you have to do if you want to sell vegetables to a supermarket, and that is about 85% of the retail of these vegetables. So every year you're driven down, not to the actual cost of producing the vegetables, but the cost of the seed and the labour. There will be no cost in that figure for maintaining the landscape, for laying the hedgerows, for maintaining the ponds, you know, for looking after nature. They're driving you down to what they call the direct or variable costs of production, which effectively means you're making a loss. And that's why British agriculture is on its knees. That's why most small family farms, you know, think that they're not going to be in business the next generation. And, you know, the tragedy of that is that most people want to know where their food comes from. They want to feel some sort of connection with it. They want to know the farmers looking after nature, that they're not abusing their staff, that they're producing good, healthy food. So what do the supermarkets do? They create their own fake farms, you know, Willow Farm chicken for Tesco's or Nightingale vegetables for Tesco's. These places don't exist. There are no Nightingales. There are no Willows. They are just a creation, a fantasy of some marketing executive. I mean, why can't they actually support the real farms? Well, I know perfectly well why they won't support the real farms, because each they actually bought from a Willow farm, and there are incidentally plenty of Willow farms, and they committed to that farmer. Well, then they couldn't screw us every year. You know, they couldn't screw us by threatening that they're going to go to Birchwood farms or Nightingale farms or some other bloody fantasy. Can't believe that it's legal, but apparently it is. It certainly isn't moral. I mean, do you want to buy your vegetables from a bunch of exploitative, you know, morally bankrupt corporations that are destroying the fabric of our countryside, destroying nature? We need supermarkets to be committed to their real suppliers, not their fantasy suppliers, and to be paying them a fair price and actually committing not just for a few months, you know, for a few years, maybe even a few decades, because that's what it takes to look after this countryside. You know, it takes generations, you know, to maintain the hedgerows, the ditches, the ponds. You know, so who is going to look after this beautiful scenery? Who's going to lay the hedges, look after the woods? You know, it's not going to be Teresa Coffey. It's not going to be Michael Gove. It's not going to be George Eustace. It's not even going to be George Monbiot. All these people, you know, have great ideas. Well, actually, sometimes some pretty lousy ideas. But they just don't have the skills. The people to be able to do those jobs are farmers, and we are losing them really quickly. We're losing those skills. So what can a farmer do to stay in business? Just get bigger and get that price down to the one that Tesco's are prepared to pay. That is your only chance of staying in business. And what a miserable world to live in. I mean, is that what we want from our countryside? Is that what we want from our food system? Is that what we want from farmers? You know, farmers need to be treated fairly. They need some commitment from supermarkets. They need to be paid a fair price, which isn't driven down on an annual contract. They actually need to be paid what they said they'd be paid. So, you know, don't get halfway through the season and say, oh, your lettuces are going on promotion, we're only going to pay you half as much. We need them to, supermarkets, to actually honour the contracts, not just the kind of suggested volumes, to actually buy it. If you said you were going to buy 100,000 Little Gem lettuce a week, buy 100,000. You know, don't buy 60,000 because the sun's gone in and people aren't eating as much salad. I mean, 30 years ago, Riverford used to sell its lettuces to Sainsbury's, and then halfway through the season, they decided instead of paying me 15p a head, they were actually going to pay me 6p a head because they were going on promotion. That was kind of the end of it. I threatened to go to the press with it, and they did actually pay me my 15p, but clearly they weren't going to buy from me the following year. So, and since then, we've started selling all our vegetables direct people's doorsteps through the veg box scheme, and we've started working with lots of other farmers, our neighbours, and there are now about 20 farmers locally who supply Riverford. And I'm really conscious that I don't ever want to behave as a buyer as that Sainsbury's buyer behaved to me. So we actually have a suppliers charter which lays out in considerable detail, you know, what our suppliers can expect from us. We always buy the volume we said we'd do. We always pay the price that we said we would, not when it's convenient, 100% of the time, and we will commit to them to the long term if they'll commit to us, and that enables them to invest in their businesses, and as a result, I think every year our suppliers get better and better. Supermarkets could play an important role in providing for a sustainable future for farmers. If we want our food produced in the right way, if we want to maintain biodiversity, if we want to fight climate change, we really need to get fair about farming.